while I pull this up. For those of you that are kind of watching live, if you'd like my resources, let me go ahead and share this real quick. My resources for this quick little session are available at that URL right there, bit.ly/basicdrive101. That's just a public viewable Google Doc. On here, and I apologize to the room, but on here is a list of just resources, ideas, links, kind of basic walkthroughs about what Google Drive is, how it's used, and more importantly, like how we as educators can kind of use this tool to kind of increase the learning and collaboration of our students, right? Okay, so for those of you that are also watching live, we have a group. I can't turn my camera around right now. We have a group of about 35 other people in this room. So everybody say hello. Hello. Right? And if you're French, say bonjour. Right? We are coming to you live from the Kamloops GAFESummit up here in British Columbia. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I kind of wanted to share a little bit about my story, about why I started using Google Drive. I've been teaching for 10 years. Right? And about 10 years ago, I was Microsoft Office guy through and through. I knew PowerPoint like the back of my hand. You would not believe the slides that I could put together. Like, you remember that like clicky clicky sound as the slides came in, and that transition sound, blah blah blah. I mean, I was that guy. I knew Excel really well. I knew Microsoft Word really well. Heck, I knew things that don't even exist anymore really well. And so I felt like, as far as like using EdTech goes, I had a good handle on how to use it, right? But the problem was, I really wasn't doing any collaboration with my students. I teach 5th grade, right? So my students, whenever they did work, all they were doing was they were just typing on it and either printing it, and they would hand me a physical copy, or they'd email it to me and I'd see that one copy that they had. Right? So about 5 years ago, my father-in-law called me up on the phone and said, okay, Donnie, you've got to check out this thing. At the time, it was called Google Docs, right? It was just docs.google.com. And I went there for the first time, and I just saw this screen that you guys see in front of you right now. And I need to be honest, I was really underwhelmed when I first saw it. Right? And if you've used Google Drive before, the first time that you see it, you're like, really? This is the thing that all these educators are raving on about. So, you know, just at the basics level, you've got folders right here, you've got subfolders. I noticed up here when I saw Drive for the first time, there was that new button, right? And that new button allows me to create new folders, upload files, upload folders. And then I noticed down here that I can make docs, sheets, slides, etc. Right? Then as I jump down, I notice, oh, I can also make forms, drawings, and so forth, right? But still, I was really underwhelmed by it because my father-in-law like raved on. And he's like, Donnie, you've got to try this with your students. So I started to play around a bit. Right? I started to play around with this. At the time, it was called Google Docs. Now it's called Google Drive. So as I started to play around with it, I realized, oh my goodness, this actually has the power to transform learning in my classroom, right? So the question is how? And so what I like to tell teachers, right, is there are 5 big reasons why you should use Google Drive, right? And on my session resources page, let me switch over here for a second. On my session resources page, I have a link right here, right underneath where it says for beginners. It says 5 big reasons you should use Google Drive. I want you guys to click on that. And if you're following on live, you can click on that too, and it'll take you into this Google Doc. Okay. Now, what this is right now, right, this is what's called a publicly viewable Google Doc. Everyone who's looking at it right now can't edit it, but they can view it, right? And if you've never seen Google Drive before, or if you've seen Google Drive before, you know that any change that I make on here can be seen real time, okay? So Google Docs, that's a part of Google Drive, but I also had Google Sheets, slides, forms, and drawings, and I'll get to those in a second, right? But as I started to play with Drive, I realized, oh my goodness, there are 5 big reasons, let me put that in front of the camera, there's 5 big reasons why people should use Drive, right? And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to do them here as a list, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and increase my font size a little bit there. And if you want, like if you're playing along at home, I guess if that's what you're doing, you're more than welcome to go and click New Document, just like this. Go into Drive and click New, make a new Google Doc, and you can kind of create this list along with me to kind of give you some practice of doing it. Right? Let's go back here. All right, so what are the 5 big reasons? Well, the first, and if you're in elementary, I almost like polled the crowd, but I realized that everybody watching won't be able to see it, right? But if you're an elementary school teacher, which I still am, when I used, let's say, the competitor's product, I felt like I spent the first 3 months of the school year teaching my, at the time, 4th graders to save a file. Right? I mean, you'd have them type, then you'd go, okay, file, save, file, save, file, save. But the nice part about every type of file within Google Drive is that everything that is typed is saved, saved automatically, right? The second that a keystroke is made, so I just typed that, and then you'll notice right up here, it's telling me all changes are saved within Google Drive. Now think about that from a teacher's perspective, right? I mean, how many times have your students lost work because it's 2:44, right? And they click the X, and then instead of clicking save, they click don't save, and you're like, your work is gone, right? But no, with this, anytime they make a keystroke, that change is going to be made. So if I were to go ahead and change that period to an exclamation point, boom, that change is now a new saved part of this document. And again, that doesn't just work within Google Docs. That works within Google Sheets, Slides, Form, and even Google Drawings, right? Okay, so next thing we're going to do here, the other thing that works within Drive is that it's really easy to rename a file. Super easy to rename a file. You know, I remember when I first was using Word stuff, I'd always would tell my students to go to File, Save As, right? And then you've got like 17, by the end of the school day or the end of the school year, you've got like 17 different versions of the doc. Or maybe if like you're emailing lesson plans to your co-teachers, you're like, okay, which one is this week's, which one's next tomorrow's subplans, whatever. But if you want to rename a file in Drive, you don't even need to make a new copy of it. Every type of file in Google Drive, you just go up here, let me zoom out here a little bit, you click where this text is, and then you just type in what you want the document to be called. So if I were to go up here and call it Reasons to Use Drive, and just call it that and click off, boom, that's now the new name of the doc. And if you look on the one that you all have in front of you, that's updated real time, right? And if you're following along at home, I guess you're at home, maybe you're at school, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe you should be asleep, but if you're following along, like you can notice that, hey, that document updates real time, okay? Kind of get to the third reason why I like Google Drive. It's easy to share a file, right? And I'm just going to put collaboration, and we'll put a smiley face right there. And earlier at the start, I talked about how, well, when I was using Microsoft products or just Word in general, when my students did work, it was always like, if I told them to do a group project, it was like 5 students crowded around the same laptop in either in your library or in the computer lab. Kids are like elbowing each other, it's my turn to type, blah, 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 etc. But within Google Drive, like when they first constructed it and put it together, rather than add tens of thousands of bells and whistles, what they decided to do was they decided to make collaboration, in other words, students working together, kind of be the heart of it, the core of it, right? And so everything that they do in Drive, whether it's they add a new feature to Slides, Sheets, or Docs, they always do it with the understanding of, okay, how is this going to make collaboration or students working together easier? Okay, so what I'm going to do now, and you'll notice up in the top right, and this is in every single type of file in Drive, there's a big blue button that says Share, right? It's good to share things, right? And you'll notice if I were to click on that, it pulls up what's called the sharing menu, right? And the sharing menu right here just basically tells you, hey, who is this document shared with? Well, what I did was I went and I made it where right now anyone who has the link to my document, which is just this URL up there, if they click on it, all they can do is just view my document, right? That's all they can do. They can just see it. But again, this is also true. This same ability works within slides. Maybe you've got a presentation that you put together that you don't want to like email directly to your students. Maybe it's a presentation that you paste the link to it on your website and students can always see it, right? Well, here's the thing though, like right now, this file is just set up where you can view it. But I want to make it where somebody in here can actually edit this file real time. Is anyone logged in? If you look up in the top right-hand corner, is anybody logged into this with their Gmail address, like an @gmail.com? Okay. Are you at the back? Oh, okay. Okay. Are you logged in with your Gmail? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called share this file, this Google Doc rather, with you directly. And what you'll be able to do, and really anybody that I share this with, I mean it could be a student at home, could be my wife, could be whatever, we'll be able to edit this document real time. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to press share, right? And now, right there where it says enter names or email addresses, what's your email address? Do you mind sharing it? RJLL AMB. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and type that in, and I'm going to make it where you can edit and press send. So what I just did was I shared that with you, right? And now if you go to your, if you're logged into your Gmail, right? If you go to the Gmail app, you just got a link that said, I've shared an item with you. But if you want to be able to see which files have been shared with you, I'm going to go up here to Drive, and then over here on the left, this little button right here says Shared with Me, right? So I went back to Drive, just drive.google.com, and then when I went there, I clicked on this little button that says Shared with Me. Do you see it? Right? And if you click that, what that does is it pulls up a list, okay? Now, a lot of people, when they see this list for the first time, this list right here, this is just a chronological listing of all the files that have ever been shared with you in Google Drive. Some people get confused with that shared with me. They think it's a folder. It's not, right? And say it with me, class. Google shared with me is not a folder. Say, shared with me is not a folder. Rather, what it is, it's just a listing of all of the files that have been shared with you, right? So let's say over here, right? Right here, there's a file that's just called Drive 101 Demo Responses, right? Right now, that file, it's not in my Google Drive. It's not in a folder in my Drive. It's just telling me, hey, I've shared this item with you, right? Or I shared it with me from my other account. But if I were to go down here, look, here's some emails from Michelle, right there. And if I wanted to share this, if I wanted to add this file to my Drive, if I wanted to add this file to my Drive, let's go down here and just find another one. If I wanted to add this file to my Drive, up here in the top right, see how there's this little folder with a funky Google Drive logo in the middle of it? If I click on that, it's going to pull up all of the folders that I have on my account, and then I just choose where I want it to go. Say I wanted to put that into my Samsung stuff folder, right? So in other words, it's still, that file is still going to be underneath shared with me, but it's also now going to be in that Samsung folder. Okay, and that's a great organizational tool. Because sometimes, like if maybe you have your students sharing files with, anyone like have your students share stuff with you, right? You'll always have to, if you want to get back to it, sometimes you feel like you have to flick through your Google Drive and find like where it is underneath shared with me. But the second you get it, you can go ahead and you can even select multiple items at once. I just click and drag like you would on a desktop. And then you can drag that and drop them even into the folders that you want them to go into, just like that, right? So now they're now living, let me put that in the right spot there, right? So if I were to go and like drop that right there, they still stay underneath shared with me, but now the links to those files live in that folder, okay? That's a nice organizational tool. Okay, definitely show your students how to do that as well, because sometimes they'll still always, if they want to find a file that you shared with them, they'll have to go in and do it that way. All right, so anyway, so it's very easy to share a file. Another kind of key point I wanted to make about sharing files, a lot of times teachers get kind of annoyed because they'll be like, well, I really want my fourth graders to do this, or I want my middle schoolers to do this, but you know, my students have a hard enough time remembering their own name, let alone like a ridiculously long email address, right? So what you can actually do, there is a website called Google Contacts. It's literally just contacts.google.com. And what that does is that actually pulls up all of the people that you've created contacts with, and it's even in here, right? One, if you're within a school district, if you click on directory, you can actually see, right? You can actually see all students within it. And when you start to type in, say, one of your co-teachers' names or whatever, you'll actually auto-complete that, where your students don't necessarily have to type in their full email addresses. You can also in here create new distribution groups, because sometimes instead of always typing in individual student names, sometimes we just want to type in 5th grade or 5th period biology. You can actually insert up to 30, or you can have as many as you want. I have all 60 of my 5th graders in a group called 5th graders. And if I type in 5th grade underneath shared with me, I can't put it on there right now because it's got their actual names on it. But if I type 5th graders, it actually auto-completes and pulls in all of their email addresses at once. Okay, so that exists. Let me go back here. Okay. So it's very easy to share a file, collaborate, etc. All right, let's jump down here a little bit. A few more things, right? There's something called, something called revision history, right? Now, what revision history is, I mean, the reason why this exists, and this is something that, like, again, I wish this existed, well, 10 years ago when I started teaching. I used to teach 4th grade writing, and I always kind of ran into this issue where, like, maybe it's the end of the school day, and earlier I brought up how, like, you know, students, they used to, instead of hitting save, they might click don't save, or maybe sometimes a student might go and accidentally delete all their work, right? And before they can click that back button, which is located right there, the undo button rather, they close out a tab, right? And then all of their work, let me go back to recent right here. So then when I open up this right here, all of their work, it seems like it's gone because that undo button's not going to work anymore, right? But in Google, within Google Drive, there's something called the revision history. So what I can do, right up here that says File, I'm going to jump down here a little bit, and I've got a little button right here that says See Revision History. Now I can click that, but a pro tip, if I go up here and I click where it says last edit was made seconds ago, that also pulls up the revision history right there. And so what that does is over here on the right, and again, this exists within Google Sheets, this exists within Google Slides, and it also exists within Google Drawings and Google Docs. So this on here will show me every single change that's been made to this document. And what I want you guys to notice, it tells me, well, at 11:49, Donnie Piercey did something in purple right here. So the thing I did was I deleted it. But let's go kind of backwards. Tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down here. And I'm going to click down here where it says Show More Detailed Revisions. Right? If I do that, it's now going to pull up every single time that it automatically saved. Ooh. So like this. Okay, so let's see, jump through here. At 10:49, it tells me that Donnie Piercey, in purple right there, added that. See how it color codes it? And if your students, let's say that they're working on like a 4 or 5 paragraph piece that you ask them to collaborate on together, guess what? It'll color code it for them as well. Have you ever given your students an assignment that, like, it's a group, maybe a group writing assignment, that by the time they turn it in, like, you're convinced only one student did all the work, right? Well, imagine when they share it with you, you can click on that revision history, and if you only see one color on there, you're like, busted, my friend. You were supposed to be working on this in a group, right? Okay, but I want to do something here. I'm going to go up here. Yeah, I mean, It's always fun to catch kids in the act, right? So I'm going to go up here, and I want it to look like it did at 11:49. So I'm going to click that. And when I do that, it actually goes back and it restores this revision. It doesn't delete anything after it. Like, it doesn't delete that one where I deleted everything. It doesn't remove that revision. That's still there, right? So if you accidentally restore a revision history, you can do that as well. Okay? All right. So let's keep going here. One more thing that you can do within Drive, and this exists within Docs, this exists within Sheets, this exists within Slides, and it's also within Google Drawings as well, is what's called digital comments, right? Called digital commenting. You know, when I first started teaching, I taught 4th grade writing, and in Kentucky 10 years ago, at the end of the 4th grade year, or year 4s, I guess, students were required to put together a writing portfolio, right? They were supposed to have 3 complete published pieces by the end of the school year. And what did that always turn into was the last 2 weeks of the school year, like mad rush down in the computer lab, like, you know, they'd print it off, I'd take home these massive stacks of paper, right, pray that there was paper in the printer when it got printed, I'd get out my red pen or my green pen, depending on what mood I was in, make those comments, hand it back to the students the next day, and say, please make these changes, right? But here's the thing, one, I always, if I wanted to say, like, have a record of what edits were made, or I wanted to be able to, say I was having a parent conference, and I want to say, well, let me show you, like, some of the suggestions that I made for your son or daughter. Well, I always had to keep that file, those things on record, right? But here's the thing, within Google Drive, you actually, as the teacher, have the ability to make digital comments. So what I'm going to do, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, let's say that a student turned this into me. Let me zoom in here. And then down here, maybe they misspelled comments, right? Maybe they put in, they forgot 2 M's. Well, they turned this into me, and I noticed, oh, there's a spelling error right there. I need to fix that mistake. Well, I want them to fix that mistake. But this could be anything. I mean, this could be a paragraph that maybe they need to add more detail on. Maybe they're being unclear, or maybe don't feel like that they're arguing their point very well, whatever. You want to, you know, put a comment on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this text, right? Then I'm going to go up here, right? And up here I have a little box that says Insert Comment, okay? And so when I click that, what it does is it puts this little comment box over here, and if you notice, it even changes the color of the highlight. It's telling me, okay, when you put this comment, it's going to go with this piece of text. Okay, let's jump over here a second. So if this was a student, I would want to make the comment like, you need to fix your spelling on this. Press comment. And now that comment is actually going to appear real-time on the student's work, where the students can then go and reply directly to it. Okay? Now, if you've ever played with commenting before, maybe you've gone through and you've made like 20 or 30 comments on students' work. Students think they can be really sneaky, and they notice that there's this little button right here that says Resolve. You guys see that? When you press Resolve, students think that that deletes the comment. So they're all like, ha 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 ha, Mr. Piercey is going to forget what he put on my paper. Well, every single comment that's made, right, and this is true for all the apps within Google Drive, if I click right up here where it says Comments, it'll show me every comment that was put, including who marked it as resolved. So you'd be like, ah, I caught you again, stop doing that. And I can even reopen those comments and put them directly back into my doc. Right? Awesome for parent conferences. We're at the end of the school year, or even during like student-led conferences, students can pull those comments back up and say, look, here's what Mr. Piercey said. Let me pull up the revision history and show you what changes I made to my doc. That make sense? All right. So that's Google Docs. Now the thing is, right, let me jump over here. Right? The thing is, Google Docs, that's just kind of like, that's usually the basic tool. And most people, when they start playing around with Drive for the first time, that's the tool, that's the app or that they use within Drive. But teachers very, very quickly figure out, let me click here, I'm going to go to New. I'm going to jump down and I'm going to make what's called a new slide. Okay? Google Slides has gotten a lot of updates, and I like to say a lot of love over the last 3 to 4 months, right? In the past, they used to have some really generic kind of canned themes. Like they used to have this old Western theme that always made me chuckle when I saw it. But now they've added a lot more contemporary themes. For example, over here it's telling me, what do you want the theme of your slideshow to look like? I can click that. And what that does is that goes and then changes the slideshow template, right? And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I want you all to see this live as I'm kind of editing it. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see up here in the top right, is that not working? You'll see up here in the top right, there's that share button again. So I can press that share button, got to give it a name. We'll call it Sample Google Slideshow. Now what I'm going to do is I want you all to be able to see this. So what I did before was I made it where I shared it specifically with a person, or I could share it with a contact group. Let's say that I just had a slide deck, like I mentioned earlier. Hey, I just want my students to have access to this slide deck later. Maybe it's a study guide. Maybe it's something that you did in class that you want them to be able to access later, right? You just want them to be able to have those resources that you made. If I press this little button right here, it says Get Shareable Link, right? That automatically goes and copies the link to your slide deck to your clipboard. And it'll tell me, well, right now, anyone at edtechteam.com with a link can view. I don't want that. I want it, let me click down to more. I want it where anyone with the link on the web can view it, right? Now, one thing I did want to say, a lot of school districts, for example mine, we have it where students cannot make their work public. In other words, like students can't make a public link that anyone in the world could have access to. That's just how we have it set up. But if you have any questions, if you don't see on yours a button that says anyone with a link can view, that means that your IT department probably has it set up where they can't do it, right? So right now I've got it where anyone with a link can view. But if I wanted to, I could make it where anyone with the link, click on this again, could edit this document or this presentation. Now here's a pro tip, okay? While it is possible to share a slide deck you can have up to 50 people or 50 students editing a doc, a slide, a spreadsheet at the same time. Has anyone ever tried that before? Yeah, while it looks cool for about 30 seconds, then, I mean, unless you give really, really clear instructions, it gets really confusing, especially if you teach younger kids, right? So that's usually why I recommend to teachers share files specifically with students, or better yet, hey, have your students teach them how to share files with each other, okay? So I'm not going to make it where everybody can edit this. I'm going to make it where people can view it. I'm going to go ahead and press Save. I'm going to go ahead and press Done. So now this link up here, this URL, that's now the link to my slide deck. So I'm going to go and copy that link. I'm going to go back into my slide, and below right here where it says For Beginners, I'm going to go and I'm going to put that. I'm going to say link to sample slideshow, or Google slide. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to copy that. A pro tip, you can press Command K and it hyperlinks it right away. And then you can press Apply, and now that, if you click that and click the link below it, it'll take you directly to this slideshow, right? Okay. So you'll see people are starting to join. Now, how do I know that people are joining, right? How do I know? Well, you'll see up here in the top right, you see all those cute little animals that are starting appearing, right? That's not just a cute little Google thing. Anytime that somebody is looking at your document or your slideshow or your sheet, it's going to put their little avatar up there. Now, if you'll notice on these, though, it's telling me anonymous. Why is it telling me anonymous? Did I share it specifically with your Gmail address? No, I didn't. I just made it where anyone with the link can view it. And again, that's another one of those reasons why I really recommend that teachers share files specifically with students instead of just making a public link that anybody can have access to. Because think, if you just make a publicly editable doc, you say, hey kids, go ahead and type your paper on here. Well, one, that revision history, that's not going to pop up. Well, it will pop up, but it'll just say anonymous. Like, you won't know who makes the changes as well. Okay? All right. So in Google Slides, very, very simple. If I were to say, like, sample slide deck, and you'll see the new slides has a nice modern feel to it. Okay? Just like in, let me jump up here for a second. Just like in Docs, you'll see that you've got that comment and that share button as well. Okay. One more thing I did want to show you, and I'm actually going to close that out and go back into it. Sorry. I'm doing a trick where I zoom in, and every now and then it won't let me zoom back out, so I'm going to go back in here. All right. So let me kind of show you another organizational trick, right? Because sometimes we might have a file that maybe a teacher shares with us. And earlier I showed you how, like, when somebody shares a file with you, you have to, like, click it and then click Add to Drive. Well, that's a lot of steps, right? That really is. So sometimes you might want to, hey, there you go. Sometimes you might want to have a, like, you just want to be able to put this directly into a folder from here. I'll get to that comment in a second. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go up here. And up here in the top left, you'll see there's a button that says Move to Folder, right? If you click that, that'll pull up all of your folders that you have on that Google account. And then you just pick the folder that you want it to go into, right? Say I want it to go into my Samsung stuff one again. Press Move, and now this file is now going to live in that folder, okay? The question is, how do I personally manage comments of students on a doc sheet and slide? Anytime that a comment's made, it kind of lives directly within that document. While it is possible to, like, highlight and copy and paste those, I mean, I don't really do anything beyond that, because if I'm pulling up student work for, like, documentation purposes, I know that I can always get to it in there. Like, they can't be deleted. Okay? All right. Close that out there. All right. Yes. Sure.
Does your school, do all the teachers do this in your school?
We have about half of our teachers who use this exclusively, and the other half they're still kind of they're starting to roll out. But every teacher is using Google Drive in some way, shape, or forms. For some of them, it's using Google Classroom. For other ones, it's just, hey, you shared a file with me. And you've got some other, like, super nerdy, geeky ones like myself that are really kind of delving really high into the tool. Okay?
Yeah.
But, all right. So let me kind of jump over here. I'm going to go back to Drive. Let me showcase one more thing that lives within Drive, just for a couple of seconds. Google Sheets. This is kind of like your Word. This is not your word processor. Google Sheets is, you want to think of this as, this is obviously your spreadsheet, right? And when it first came out, it kind of got a really bad rap, because for a lot of times people were like, oh, well, you know, why don't I just want to use Excel? You had a lot of, like, Excel fanboys who were like, hey, look at all these stuff I can do and that you can't do in Google Sheets. Google's goal with Sheets is to have about 90% of the functions and formulas, that usability that Excel does. So if you think about that from, like, a teacher perspective, I mean, that's pretty good, right? Some of the formulas are a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that you can't use them. I know just personally one way that is just, I've used Sheets that have changed my life. Anytime I go on a field trip, I have all of my students that I'm traveling with, their names, contact information, parent phone numbers, parent email addresses, emergency contacts on a sheet. And Google Sheets works on a mobile app. Usually I hold up my phone here, but my phone is broadcasting to my face, so I can't do that. But Google Sheets is also an app that works on iPhones and Androids. So whenever I'm doing attendance or keeping track of who's here or who's what, I'll just pull it up on my phone and say, oh, okay, roster, I've got all 27 of you, let's go, right? Teachers also do their grade books in Sheets. It really kind of depends on what you want to do. Okay. So let's kind of keep going here. The other last two things I wanted to touch on really briefly before we kind of got into a little bit of magic here. I did want to talk about Google Forms. Google Forms, I got to close that out here. Google Forms, this is where a lot of times teachers, when they see forms for the first time, they'll say, oh, well, this is where I can make tests, which it is, right? I mean, this is a lot of times teachers you'll have go in, and in forms they'll make their multiple choice tests, etc. But the thing that I did want to cover is that Google Forms, while it's great for creating multiple choice questions, okay, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to limit yourself to those multiple choice questions. If you're following along at home, which I love that that makes me happy that people are following me along at home, I actually have a link right down here underneath where it says, for beginners, there's a link right here that says create an assessment. If you guys click on that, okay, it'll take you to a sample form that I made. And on here, I kind of just wanted to showcase, again, this is not a session on Google Forms, and this is actually what the old Google Forms look like. There is the new Google Forms, which I'll show you in a minute, right? They're not within Google Apps for Ed yet, so I know a lot of the teachers that are asking or watching won't have it, but I'll show you what it's going to look like. But on here, this is an example of a sample Google form. And what I wanted to the reason why I showcased this one right here is because I wanted to show teachers some of the different items that they can add to a form. You can add videos to forms. Have you ever, we talked that, I mean, I kind of joked about it this morning, but the idea of flipping your classroom, right? Well, what if you created or used a YouTube video, post that up the top of a form? Students can actually watch that video. We the people. I like that one, by the way. It's the preamble, remember from Schoolhouse Rock, but it's a remix version of it. It's pretty sweet. But students could watch the video, and then down below it, answer questions about it. Okay. You can do text type of questions, like spell the capital of so-and-so. I've seen kindergarten teachers that they'll use forms where they'll just put 10 blank items on there, and they'll actually use it for spelling tests. They'll say, okay, in box 1, spell the word school, right? Just showcasing some of the other type of questions, multiple choice. I like these self-efficacy type of questions, like, hey, how confident are you? A lot of times these type of questions give me way more information as a teacher than a multiple choice question ever could, right? Because think, how many times have you had students get stuff, they're like, yeah, I got this, and they're like marking, yeah, 5s, 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 but then they're still getting it wrong. So it gives you some great discussion points that you can use with your students as well. Well, why did you think that you were getting this question right? Okay, you can insert images, etc. And then, okay. So down the bottom, here's something I did want to point out. Down the bottom right now, I have it set up where students are typing in, they have to type in their name or their email address. Okay. And the reason why I want to do that is there's again, this is not a session on forms, but there is a way where you can actually auto-grade Google Forms through a script or add-on called Flubaroo. I don't know if Wendy can put that link to like a YouTube video or something in the back channel, but it's just Flubaroo. It's an auto-grading program where it takes responses from forms, grades it, and then emails the students their responses immediately. Right? It's pretty snazzy. Wonderful, especially if you've got like 150 students that you see throughout the day, and you don't necessarily want to have to go in and grade all those. Okay? So anyway, on this one, you'll notice down the bottom of the form, I asked the question, what's your name and what's your email address? And when I first made this form 2 years ago, I had to put that on there because, well, I had to trust that my students would be honest in, hey, yes, my name is Bob. Yes, I'm taking my quiz. Yes, here's my email address. But I wanted to show you guys this, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to switch to my work account here for a second. I'm going to make a new form through a nice little extension I have. Within Google Apps for Education, which is GAFE or GAF, I guess depending on who you're talking to, on the form creation page, right up here at the top, it gives you some options, right? And the first two options right here, these are things that I feel like all educators should know about. This first one, your students have to have an email address within your domain. In other words, they have to have an email address that ends with your school, whatever, to view the form. So, you know, we use, in my school district, we use forms for homecoming voting. And we've got student names on there, but think, as long as that box is checked, nobody outside of the domain can view it. And then this little second box right here, automatically collect their username. Guess what? The second they submit that form, it's going to know that Bob Smith or it records it as their email address. So bob.smith@whatever. Okay. So again, if you're making forms within your Gmail address, you don't have those 5 options. You only have these 3. Okay. So one other thing I wanted to show you about forms before we kind of go into the management of Drive and drawings, I'm going to switch to my Gmail address because I wanted to show you all what the new Google Forms looks like. It's not officially out. It's kind of doing a slow rollout. Right up here, and this I'm logged into my Gmail right now. I have it. Not everybody does, but up here at the top, I've got a little button that says "Try the new forms." Right. Just let me click on that. This so that way I can show you all what it looks like. This is what the new Google Forms are going to look like. If you're familiar with Google Classroom at all, you'll notice it looks very classroomy with the blocks and insert questions and things. You can change your question types right here. You'll even notice they don't have every single question type available yet, but the fact that it says date and time and I just can't click them, that tells me that's just a question type that I'll be able to add soon. Okay, but this is what the new forms looks like. Again, the reason why I'm not doing a demo on that now because it's not within every Google Apps for Ed domain, but like if 2 or 3 months from now you go into Drive and you're like, why does my Google Forms look different? You're like, it's because the new Google Forms is kind of pushed out to your domain. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So by the way, if you're in Forms, let me jump down here. If you want to go, if you're in the new Forms, you want to go back. There in the bottom left, there's that little dude. You press him, he takes you back to the old Forms. Okay. All right. So the one last thing that lives within Drive that I just kind of wanted to showcase. Let me kind of go here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make what's called a new Google Drawing, right? Google Drawings kind of get a bad rap. A lot of times when people see them, they think it's like Microsoft. It's like glorified Microsoft Paint. Remember Microsoft Paint? Used to go and put like Donnie was here with the spray paint can. You know you've done it. Just admit it. Right? But the cool thing that I love about Google Drawings is remember everything within Drive is meant to be collaborative, right? So you'll even see up there in the top right, there's that little share button. So if I were to press that, let's go give this sample drawing, and I were to say share this with my wife, right, and give her permission to edit it, then that means that she could go into this drawing and she could actually start to make edits, add changes, and just like in Docs, it updates real time. Now, another pro tip, if you want to start doing like drawings with your students, awesome for math class. A lot of times I have given my students assignments like, hey, draw me a 3-dimensional figure that has a volume of 120 square cubic units, let's say. So they'll have to go in, sketch it, they'll insert text boxes that puts the units and things in there, right? And then they'll share it with me, or they'll do it in a group. But another, like a big pro tip when it comes to using drawings, it's really hard to do like from distances. So like if students are at school or maybe a student's at home, it seems to work best if you've got people who are watching live can't see this, but people are sitting close together just because they can talk a little bit easier, like, oh, I'll move this here, I'll do that, etc. Okay. Okay. So those 5 things live within Drive. We have about 15 minutes left. So what I kind of wanted to chat about for the remaining 15 minutes is, hey, how do you go about like organizing your Drive? What are some of like the buttons that live within here? And like, how can you as a teacher actually use this tool? Okay. So first things first, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch to my Gmail account. Because the reason why I'm switching, I've got a lot more stuff in there. I've got nice subfolders and things set up that I wanted to showcase. Okay, so when you first go to Drive, you'll see here on the right, you've got this. Here's the 6 different options that you have. First, my drive, and if I want, I can press that little down arrow, and it's underneath there that I'll see all of the folders or subfolders that kind of exist. Okay. I usually recommend that teachers, if you're going to use this with your students, maybe you're storing your assessments, your projects, student work, etc. Maybe you have 1 per subject, right, as opposed to 1 per classroom. Because I'll mention briefly at the end how a tool called Google Classroom does a lot of this for you. Okay. All right. So let's say that I wanted to, let's have some fun with this. Maybe the contents of this folder right here, right? Maybe the contents of this folder, I wanted to share the contents of everything that's in this folder with my students, right? You can do that. You can share folders very, very, very easily. So what I did is I clicked on the folder, right? And then I'm going to go up here. There's multiple ways to this. Could have right-clicked on the folder too, but up here I see the little guy with the plus sign next to him. That's the share button. So if I press that, it's going to pull up, just like in any type of doc or sheet or slide, it's going to pull up that sharing menu, right? And so let's say that I wanted to share the contents of that folder with my friend Mike, right? So you'll notice if I start typing in Mike, because I've got contacts turned on, it pulls up all of the mics that I have, so I don't have to always type in every single full email address. There's Mike. I can click that. Oops, sorry. Let me go ahead and refresh that. Because I'm zooming in, it kind of bumped it down to the bottom. But just like I could in anything else, let me go ahead and we'll just do that right there. I'll click share. Right. So I'll go ahead and I'll type Mike.Paul, boom. And then I've got several options here. One, if I were to put can edit, that means that any file or any document that I put within that folder, Mike can edit it, or anybody else. Well, maybe you want to share a folder with your students that's study guides, that's resources, that heck, you can put videos in Google Drive, right? You probably don't want your students editing your study guides, right? So if I wanted to say Mike have the ability to just view things within this folder, I can click on where it says can view and then jump down and just press send. And so that just sent Mike an email. He's going to go, what are you doing? Why did I just get this email? But that just sent Mike an email that says, hey, I've shared this folder with you. And when he clicks on it, it's going to take him to a page that he just has a little button that says add to my drive. And then he'll have that shared folder that exists within his drive. You can do the same thing with your students, right? Share a folder with them. Yes, we have a question over here.
Is it true that once they can view it, if they rename it, they can then edit it?
No, but what you can do, tell you what, here's what I'll do. Let me go in here. The question was, if students rename a file, can they edit it, right? The question was that. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to make a document right here. We'll call this sample doc, right? I can rename it as many times as I want, but what I think you're talking about is underneath every file in Drive, I have the option to click this little button that says make a copy, okay? If I click that, it'll say, well, what do you want to title it? Like right now it's called copy of a Google Doc. If I press that, now I've got a file in my Drive that's called copy of a Google Doc, right? So your students can do that. However, let me show you this. This is a new feature that's been added in the past couple months. Maybe I don't want my students going in and making copies of my study guides and editing them or like duplicating stuff in folders. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to click on Advanced, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but I can't zoom in on this. Down here at the bottom, this is the Advanced Sharing menu. I can click this. Oops, see, it messed it up for me there. But those 2 boxes, if I check them, stop students from having that file make a copy option. It even stops them from sharing it with other people as well. Okay, so if you're concerned about students making copies of your files, you just click those 2 boxes and they can't do it. Okay, does that make sense? Right, so that's a nice little trick in there. All right. All right. So 2 more things I wanted to showcase, and then they wanted me to stop with about 5 minutes left to take questions from either people watching live or from kind of people here. I'm guessing that there's some people in this room who maybe you've been teaching for like 15 or 20 years, and you're like, oh dear Lord, I have 30 slide decks put together, I have hundreds of exams made, but they're Word files or they're PDFs, and they're not in Google Drive. Well, I want to be able to get to this stuff in Drive. I want to be able to have my students collaborate on it. I want to be able to send forms to them, etc. Right? Well, you can do that. However, there's two things you got to do. First, up here in the top left, and if you're watching at home, you can go ahead and do this live. In Drive, I'm going to click this little box that says Settings, or sorry, the gear, and then I'm going to jump down to where it says Settings. If I press that, it pulls up this little window right here. Now again, I'm logged into my Gmail right now. So on here it's telling me, oh, I've got 42 gigabytes of 102 gigabytes used. But if you're logged into it with your school account, you actually have unlimited storage within Google Drive. You can't run out of space. So like all those videos, you're like, man, I wish I could put those in Drive. You can, and you've got 10 terabytes of data, which if you know how much that is, like that's a lot of video. Okay, you're not going to run out of space. So that's right there. And then these two boxes, I would recommend going and checking those two boxes right now. The first one says convert uploaded files to Google Docs editor format. What that does, anytime you add a Word file, an Excel file, or a PowerPoint file to Drive, it's going to automatically convert it to a doc, to a Google Sheet, or to a Google slide deck, where you can have that collaborative feature. And then the other one, the big knock on Drive, there used to be a campaign that was called the Scroogled campaign. I don't know if you guys remember that. But they said, oh, well, if you lose Wi-Fi, it doesn't work, so nanny, nanny, boo-boo, sorry, it's not, what's the point of getting Chromebooks? Well, guess what? If that box is checked right there, I can't turn off my Wi-Fi now because we're live. Usually I go live and I show how you can still edit it offline. But if that box is checked, it'll actually save like cache files of it'll actually save cached files of your docs. So if you happen to lose Wi-Fi, you can actually keep editing them. And then when it reconnects, it saves that updated file. Now, obviously, you can't collaborate. And if you've got like 4 or 5 students working offline, it kind of messes up a little bit. But that's an awesome trick to show your students. Have your students do that on their accounts. So like if they don't have Wi-Fi at home, let's say, and they're taking their devices home, guess what? They can still work on their docs, etc., off the grid. Okay. All right. So when this box is checked right here, now this takes a while, and because well, it doesn't take a real long while, but if I wanted to, I could go here and click New, and I could actually upload individual files. Let's say I had a Word file. If I were to go press File Upload, that'll actually, and just click the doc, the Word file, it would automatically convert it to a doc. And if I press that folder upload button, well, I can actually upload multiple folders at once, and it even keeps the same subfolders in there as well. Now, if you've been teaching for 10 or 15 years and you've got like lots of folders, it's not going to be something that takes like a minute or two to do. I made that switch about 5 years ago now. And it took about a couple of hours because I had some large image files, pictures, etc. But once you do it, you can then access your stuff all collaboratively. But you can also, guess what, pull it up on any device at any time. Really snazzy. Okay. That's the basics of Drive. Now there are a ton more advanced features. Right up here where
Whoops, it looks like we may have lost Donnie for a second. But if you've been following along on the back channel, we did have a couple of cool things that got shared. Like Dave Waltman said, Control-Alt-M is a nice keyboard shortcut to add a comment. Thanks, Dave. And we also had a few really great ideas from folks coming in the chat. So you can see here we've got really great ideas. Oh, there's Donnie. Hi, Donnie. Can you hear us? Oh, let's unmute Donnie. Whoops, Donnie. Oh. Okay, so folks, let me just look really quick online as Donnie wraps up. I think maybe his main computer maybe is done. But thanks, Kristen, for the great ideas of making it like a smart board game. Hi, oh, Donnie. Donnie. I'll try to unmute him, see if that'll work. Okay, cool, guys. So if you had some questions, I saw some things come in on the sign-in form. Make sure you sign in there. We'll go ahead and give away our cardboard and send you a follow-up email with a link to this archive so you can watch it again with Donnie. And then Donnie, actually, we're really excited, has an online course coming up. So if you liked listening to Donnie today and hearing about his deep dive into that, you can actually sign up to take a course with him. It's at invite.co/DA0C, and it's limited. There's a small group, so it's only 15 educators for a 6-week course of deep diving into how to integrate this into the elementary classroom with Donnie. So sign up if you're interested in a little bit more, Donnie. We will send out answers to your questions that you might have had about organizing your drive. I'm looking really quickly at some of your questions that popped in. Let's see. Checking on the sign-in sheet here. Ever experienced Google Drive crashing and a plan for backup from Christine? And Christine, I think Donnie just shared a really great idea, making sure you turn on your offline docs, and that will give you access, right? Because we've all had that happen before where maybe it crashes. If it does crash, reboot your Chrome, restart your computer, do all of those great things that help us troubleshoot. Thanks for asking that, Christine. Let's see, Jane Koval has a great question for, can you list resources? Oh, hi, Donnie.
Hello. Yeah, the Wi-Fi went out on all of our
networks. Funny. It's because you were talking about it, and then there you go.
Yeah, that's okay. I showed them the T-Rex trick.
Nice, right? Cool. Well, thank you so much, Donnie. We were just wrapping up in the back channel. Some really good examples came in for how to use drawings from a lot of our viewers at home were sharing cool ideas like in drawings, putting shapes around the actual drawing space and using them as interactives for an interactive lesson. Kristen had a great idea about that I wanted to share. Louise and some others had some really great use cases for forms. And not everyone has the domain yet, but everybody's really excited about possibly seeing the new forms. So thanks, Donnie. I am just going to check the Q&A here on Hangout. We did get one. Daryl wanted to know if I add a shared file to my drive and then delete that file in the shared with me section, will it still live in my drive? I know Donnie shared a little bit about the difference between shared with me and a folder. Donnie, what do you think for Daryl? What's the best response for that?
It honestly depends. I apologize. People are leaving right now because it's lunchtime. But it depends on who the owner of the file is. If you are the original owner, then there's a trash in Drive, and I just realized I didn't cover that. But if you're the owner, it'll be in there. And if it's not, you'll have to find out who the owner is if they trash it, and then have them just reshare it with you. That seems to be the best solution I've found to it.
Cool, thanks. And then Kristen Mulder wanted to know from Sioux Falls, you dived into management techniques with the folders, but she's wondering any management tips for Drive and Classroom, kind of managing both. She uses Drive extensively, But they've used Hapara for a management system for 3 years, and now they're thinking of switching to Classroom since there's so many similarities. What do you think about managing? There's so many great tools out there and so many different workflows you can set up. Have you seen good success in making Drive and Drive folder structure and Classroom working together? Any advice you have for Kristen on management?
Yeah, so what I do with my students when it comes to using Classroom is I'll still do assignments for them. I'll not do it for them, but I'll make the template. Every now and then I'll do an assignment where I make a template for them in Classroom, pass it out to them, have them work on it individually and return it to me. But if they're doing like collaborative work, maybe it's they're working on a mind map together, maybe it's they are working on a doc together. What they'll do is they'll start working on it in Drive and they'll share it with their classmates. And then they'll go into Classroom and then each student will add the link to their doc as part of the assignment. So, yeah.
Awesome, Donnie. Any other question, folks watching online? Thank you so much for keeping the back channel strong. Like I mentioned, we'll post this archive will be available in the next 5 minutes on the Google Plus page. So if you want to go back slower and pause Donnie and try out some of this stuff and his resources, you're free to do that. And make sure you have his resources. I'll just show this one more time and then let Donnie go get some lunch. Resources at bit.ly/basicdrive101, and we'll send you guys a follow-up email. And then Donnie, I shared with them while your Wi-Fi went down, but about joining you. There's only 15 spots, it sounds like. But any other description you want to give for folks about what they can expect for the 6-week course with you, if they're interested?
Well, I know a lot of times elementary school teachers, we feel like when it comes to using these Google apps, like we always kind of feel like we can't use them the way that they're meant to be used or intended, and that's just not true. So it'll be a 6-week course that kind of walks through like, okay, I'm a 2nd grade teacher. What are some ways that I could use Drive or Blogger, just any of the core major Google apps with my students. Each time that we hang out, it'll be for about an hour. That way, if people have any questions like, hey, how do I blank? Or any issues that they're having, oh, I noticed that this student, or I had a student who was doing blank, how do we address that issue, or what's the best way to that? It'll be a great course that kind of walks them all through the ins and outs of, hey, if you want to get googly as an elementary school classroom or teacher, how best to do it.
Awesome, Donnie. Cool. Now finally we can answer the question of we always get every summit, how do we take Donnie home with us? And now finally we can. Thanks, Donnie. All right, guys watching online, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you make it to another EdTechTeam session on air or a summit that's in your area at GAFESummit.com. And of course, stay in touch online at EdTechTeam, and you can find Donnie online to ask him more questions or keep in touch or collaborate with his elementary classroom at Mr. Piercey. So thanks again, everyone, and thanks so much, Donnie, for teaching us as well as the 30 people in the room. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye, Donnie.
Bye.